Welcome. You are entering CCNA's studio in STEM City, USA. CCNA is committed to equity in education, social justice, and health.
I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good. But I have a story, and I don't know where to start.
I'm good. But I feel alone in a crowd.
I'm good, but nobody understands.
I'm good, but the past keeps coming back.
But I can't get out of bed.
And I can't sleep.
I'm good, but I feel overwhelmed.
I'm good, but I don't feel safe.
But I don't even know who I am anymore.
But I still have nightmares.
But I don't need any help.
I'm good, but I don't feel anything anymore.
I'm good, but I can't live like this anymore.
I'm really not so good. But are you ready to listen?
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Page. I'm the Exec Director for CCNA here in Alexandria. Thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon. We've got some very special guests with us. We're going to talk about veterans' health, especially in light of this being Veterans Weekend or Veterans Day. Let me first introduce our guests, and then we'll circle back, and we'll start with the oldest person in the panel, Alan Lomax, sir. Please introduce yourself, Alan.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Alan Lomax. I chair the Partnership for Health of Alexandria.
Welcome, Alan. Dr. Sophia, come on and tell us who you are.
Hi, thank you for inviting me, Colonel Page. It's great to be here. I'm Sophia Mata. I'm the Senior Director of Medical Services at Home Base, the National Center of Excellence in Boston.
And you're still a Red Sox fan, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, whatever. Dr. Lewis, please. Dr. Lewis? You're muted, Dr. Lewis. You're muted, Dr. Lewis.
Evelyn Lewis, President and Chair of Veterans Health and Wellness Foundation.
Evelyn, where are you right now? You seem to be moving. What are you doing?
Our question was what type of wood?
You're breaking up, but I know that you're on a boat someplace in the Pacific, and you're hiding from somebody. So we got you. So we'll keep you off camera. Welcome. Has John Bowman joined us yet, Quan? We have one other guest coming on in a minute, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Quan, what's next? Quan?
Leslie Dillard, a 35-year veteran of the United States Army, and I am proud to serve. But I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about talking. It is okay to say that you're not okay. Just a little bit about my story in this scenario. I am a two-time survivor of suicide attempt, one with pills and one with trying carbon monoxide with a car in a garage. And so I just want to share with you today, God has a purpose for your life. We all are here for a purpose. And it doesn't bode well for us to take ourselves out. If you need help, get help. Get help. It is so important for us to understand that we need to love on one another. We need to take care of one another, especially our veteran community. So I just implore you today, get help. It really is okay to talk.
Wow. Dr. Dillard and I have been friends for a while. She's a counselor, a pastor in San Antonio. She's doing a lot of work with the Air Force right now. And Dr. Mott, I'd like to bring her to Boston with me one time to see what it's like to be at home base. We're going to go ahead and get started as our guests come in. And let me first introduce my good friend, George Bowman. George, you're welcome. Please introduce yourself. You're on mute, George. George, unmute yourself. Quick introductions, sir.
Gotcha.
Gotcha. Uh, Glad to be here. I'm General George Bowman, and looking forward to the conversation, looking forward to the discussion. Um, we have much to share and much to talk about.
George, say hello to Dr. Mata. She had some words of wisdom for you. Dr. Mata's on, George.
Hello,
Hi,
Dr.
Bowman. It's so wonderful to see you. I hope you're doing well. And thank you for all that you're doing, both you and Colonel Page, and also Kwan and Jackie, and all the work that you're doing there. And it's so vital. And I love the spirituality aspect. I'll stop there. More to say.
Good. We're going to go ahead and get into the heart of the discussion. A couple minutes. This is Veterans Day weekend. The last couple of days, I've been in nursing homes and rehab centers with veterans. Yesterday was pretty tough. I went to a veteran rehab center, and there was a pilot there who was 92 years old who used to fly Phantoms. And we talked for a while, and he said that, next year when you come back, assuming I'm coming back next year, bring some more veterans with you. And I promised to do that. So today we spoke to the Rotary Club here in Alexandria. And my message to them was, look, I don't want to make this journey by myself. So the Rotary Club has agreed that they too now will go and visit vets a couple times a month. And there were several veterans there. So I guess what I'm saying to the audience is that within this veterans network, there's a lot of potential to do good and connect people. And I think we're in a good spot and a good space to do that, especially now that our soldiers are coming home needing help. So what I'd like to do is get into the heart of our discussion around what we can do as a community to address our veterans. And since Alan and I are colleagues here in the city, I'm going to start with my good friend, Alan. Alan, your thoughts, please.
Well, I think there's a number of things that we can do to help with our veterans and connect with them. I know that one of the biggest things in recent time periods have been peer support groups. I know I've chatted with a couple of veterans recently, one member of my family, and who've talked to me about the importance of peer support groups. I've also talked with firefighters out in Fairfax County, and they say it's important to talk to trained professionals, but the people who they really get a lot of the reflections back on are those who have lived the experience and know what it's like to experience what they experience, and having those conversations with somebody who experienced something has helped them a lot through their journey. I'm starting to have conversations with some other groups about trying to create more peer support groups here in the city of Alexandria, not just for veterans, but also for people across all age categories.
How do you plan to do that, Alan? What's the approach?
Well, actually, NAMI of Northern Virginia, National Alliance for Mental Illness, and I have been having started a conversation about 3.5 weeks ago about how they have a number of activities throughout the jurisdictions in Northern Virginia, but they have a little bit going on in Alexandria, but not as much as the other jurisdictions. So our initial meeting was to have conversations about doing more in Northern Virginia, in Alexandria. And then we're talking about how can we create more peer support groups, and is there a way to create a safe place that exists where people can come in for peer support.
Is that with Mrs. Kissling, or?
It is.
She's a pretty powerful lady.
Rebecca. Yeah. So
okay.
She and I have been having a number of conversations. She's actually sent me a proposal, and I'm reviewing the proposal, and then I'm going to figure out who in the city to best connect with.
We always start with you. That's a good start with everybody else. Yeah. I'm going to come back to you in a minute. I want you to talk about prayer breakfast, community stakeholder breakfast, and what you're doing with community assessment. Let me go over now to the Red Sox fan in Boston. Dr. Mata, can you tell us a little about home base and what you're doing and what you just did recently with General Bowman and a couple other good-looking soldiers?
Sure. Well, I think that what's really important is to talk about connection. And so many of our veterans feel alone, and they have a loss of sense of identity and purpose sometimes when they go through transition. And sometimes they feel like, they might be a burden to other people, or they don't want to talk about it. And as you know, I was connected to the American Psychiatric Association Foundation through Becca Brindell. I met Wall Andrews, and the video that you showed saying "I'm good" You know, it's so easy to say I'm good rather than to get to how you're really feeling.
That's true.
So it takes you more. You've got to really talk about what's going on, and you have to listen. So you have to truly ask someone how they're doing and get real. Um, Part of our connection, and when I met Raul, he came to home base, and I talked about my own personal story. I'm not a veteran. I have 4 uncles who served in World War II, you know, 2 in the Air Force and 1 in the Army and 1 in the Navy, you know, and I was in New York on 9/11. If you were at the Brain Health Summit, or you heard how I witnessed it in New York, you know, the aftermath of that. And so then I ended up working for the Army at Fort Drum, you know, because of the mission, the mission of taking care of those who serve, both active duty and veterans, the impact that it has on families. You're not just talking about the veterans, you're talking about the families, and having run the child and family behavioral health services, and being an advocate for them, and knowing that oftentimes what happens downrange also impacts the entire family and the community, and knowing that the support is there. And some people may not want to talk about their mental health to start, because if you open that dam, they will feel like it's just going to all pour out, and it's better just not to talk about it. But so doing things like physical activities, you know, engaging in sports, engaging in you know, religious communities and spiritual practices, and just being able to be there in something that doesn't have to be, that can give someone the courage to be able to talk about what's really bothering them. And people need to feel like they have a purpose in life. And I think that spirituality can really provide wisdom and hope. And you have to really get to that point where they can talk about how they ended up being so resilient in getting through what it is that they went through. And it really is about having that connection. Home base being a Red Sox foundation and a Mass General program, founded after the World Center Series win by the Red Sox. And it's been dedicated to healing the invisible wounds of veterans, service members, and their families through world-class clinical care, wellness, education, and research, all at no cost, regardless of discharge status. You know, so many people have been discharged from the military for alcohol or substance use that's really connected to the traumas that they've had. So we want to decrease any barriers that anyone has. We know that people live in different areas where the zip codes are, you know, they just don't have a lot of support. We will fly you in here, we'll put you in a hotel, all at no charge, and give you 2 weeks of treatment. That's a good start. But we also have veteran outreach coordinators of every single branch of service who are support and continue their contact with the veteran over the course of the year to make sure that they're there. And we're there constantly. Anyone who knows me, I give out my phone number, I give out my email. I'm like, call me. Just don't be alone. You are not alone in this. And so I'm interested in hearing everyone else talk as well too.
Thank
so,
you.
Again,
you give out your passport too if they ask for your gracious host. I'm going to slide now to General Bowman, who was with you a few weeks ago up in Red Sox country. George, you want to share a couple of your experiences with Dr. Mata?
That time I spent up there was just valuable. It opened my eyes, number one, just listening to all the presenters while we were there. And I used my own situation as an example. And I was hitting on all cylinders on some of those charts. So it was very illuminating for me. It was very eye-opening. Dr. Mata, when you talk about veterans needing someone to talk with, and engage in some kind of way so that they don't keep those feelings bottled up, totally agree. And I find that to be my experience as well in speaking with and talking to and counseling veterans. Everywhere I go, I talk about the homeless rate and I talk about the suicide rate, especially since 9/11, and the numbers are pretty staggering. When we've only lost about 7,000 plus soldiers to combat since 9/11, all services, but we've lost 35,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines to suicide during that same time period. More than 5 times the number from suicide than actually fell in combat, which suggests that all the services, have a very serious problem here. And to their credit, they all recognize it and they are actively trying to do something about it, both for those soldiers on active duty and those that are in a retired status as well. One of the largest groups of suicide, people who have committed suicide, are Vietnam veterans. And we know the treatment that many of them received when they returned. They were not welcomed home as the soldiers from Desert Shield and Desert Storm. They didn't come home to parades. They came home to a divided country and a lot of turmoil, some of which never really got settled. They're one of our biggest groups that we're
George, I'm going to come back to you in a minute and talk to you about our shared experiences as leaders in the military and our arrogance back then not to talk about suicide. It would just be okay. We didn't spend a lot of time as commanders on mental health. We just kind of gave lip service, but things have changed. And I want your perspective on what the Army can do now, not the Army, I'm sorry, the military can do now to include the VA and some of the things that we've been trying to do together in the last 4 or 5 years. Let me go now to the Pacific Ocean and see if I can find Dr. Lewis. Dr. Lewis, are you with us? Dr. Lewis, here she is on a boat. Dr. Lewis, please introduce yourself. And you're on mute too, by the way. Dr. Lewis, you're on mute. We just finished talking to her. Well, while she's finding the mute button, she is on vacation on her way to Australia with some other medical providers. She was in a bar the last time I saw her, so maybe she's still there. But Dr. Lewis, if you're with us, please unmute yourself, and we can talk about what you're doing here in the city. Quan, if you could hit her up behind the scenes, that would be good. Jackie, one of you.
Can I just take a moment to add while we're waiting on that?
Absolutely, go ahead. Bill me out, please. Bill me.
The Surgeon General just released that we're in an epidemic of loneliness. And if you think of the pandemic, COVID, and what that did, and I always talk about alcohol and substance use disorders being the pandemic within the pandemic. And you mentioned the Brain Health Summit, and my apologies, I got distracted because of all the star power in this room. But what happened is that through the APA Foundation, which actually set up 988, the suicide prevention line for veterans, it was at the urging of the American Psychiatric Association that we established this line for veterans to address. Initially, it was 22 a day. And I think, as Anna mentioned, we're doing better. It's at 17 per day, but 17 suicides per day is still 17 too many. And what we need to do is work on getting that to 0. And, what's really important about that is coming together as a community. So the Brain Health Summit, which was actually sponsored by the American Psychiatric Association, was to take a deep dive looking at people from Special Operations Command to Naval Special Warfare to the Traumatic Brain Injury Center of Excellence, the National Intrepid Center of Excellence, People like you, Colonel Page, Major General Bowman was one of the keynote speakers because of his focus on generations of service. You know, the fact that Rawl introduced talks about the importance of mental health care works. The APA Foundation has a campaign that has increased the visibility of people getting mental health care, and that can actually help people to reduce stigma. We know how important it is to get this treatment, and our concept of health span takes a look at everything, the whole warrior, the whole wounded warrior, and figures out what can we do to get you better, body, mind, and soul. And it takes an entire group of people. It's not just one. And everyone here that's listening, everyone on the call is needed to help move the needle to a way that we can actually help people who may not otherwise receive it.
Do you plan to do that again next year?
That is the plan, yes, sir. And we'd love to have you come visit again.
Okay, the crab cakes were good, the food was good, so we'll be back. Let me stop
Awesome.
George for a minute. I want to go to Alan to check in here in Alexandria. Alan, can you talk about some of the things that you're doing, not you, but the city's doing to address mental health specifically, some of the programs that we have?
Sure, and I just want to clear up one point that Dr. Mata is not the only Red Sox fan. I'm a longtime Red Sox fan, so just so you know that.
So cut the feed then, cut the feed.
Through good times and bad. Yeah, you know, in the city, to touch on a couple of points that Dr. Mata made. First off, I want to go back. I know what your question was, Colonel Page, but so I grew up in a military family, and I appreciate the focus on the family members as well. Because I know growing up, I didn't feel that the military provided enough focus on family members, particularly during deployments. I know there were times I felt very anxious when my father was overseas, and sometimes he was in very safe places and sometimes he wasn't, but I still had the anxiety. And you talked about loneliness and the Surgeon General's comments. You know, one of the things that, well, here in Alexandria, we have a community health improvement plan that the community developed our priority areas looking at data. So we do a community health assessment, and then we develop a community health improvement plan with the community members every 5 years. And in that plan, they identified 3 priorities that was important for our plan, which was addressing housing, addressing mental health, and addressing poverty. And mental health was really interesting. It's coming up as one of the 3 top priorities. In that, we've been focusing on such things as improving physical activity and making low-cost physical activity available to people across all ages. We had in the community health improvement plan and the mental health one area that dealt with loneliness, but at that time it was originally focused on seniors, but since it's been expanded across the timelines for people. As a matter of fact, the last 2 years we've awarded grants to 2 organizations that focus on prenatal and postpartum mothers and their mental health care during that time period, particularly through peer support groups. And our senior services actually this year just got a grant for a friendly caller program to reach out so seniors don't feel isolated, and people will be touching in with them. So we're doing some of these things. One of the things, stigma, of course, is one of the big things. And the other thing that we're finding in Alexandria that our community members have pointed out, there are a lot of resources, but knowing what they are is difficult. It takes a lot of patience and time in order to find them. And, you know, when you're going through a family member or you are going through a family crisis, patience and time don't exist. You want to find them quickly. So actually, we're working with George Mason University, and they're helping us create a web app that will consolidate the resources. And we're hoping that it'd be more like that would be based upon questions. So, for instance, I have I'm going through a mental crisis. What do I need to do? Or I just have some concerns. So, is there a screening tool I can look at to see how I'm doing, or how a loved one is doing? So that's one of our big projects that we're working on with that university, and we're hoping to have that web app up by July of 2025. So that's one of the other things. All of our stuff is done by community organizations. We have a lot of we're dealing a lot with integrating social emotional learning in the classroom, both in the school system and also in pre-K schools that exist outside the school system. So those are some of the other activities, as well as there's a group called Girls on the Run that gets girls out there running, and they have incorporated social emotional learning into their running program. So those are some of the things that are going on to address mental health in the city of Alexandria right now.
Good. I'll come back to you to talk about the chip. George, let's go back into Boston with Dr. Mata and lessons learned from you and what she produced in her 2-day conference. What are a couple of takeaways for you?
Some of the takeaways for me were to, number one, pay a little bit closer attention to my own health, to my own mental health, and to make sure that I'm doing those things, like in Dr. Mata's slides, that accelerate as opposed to, to decelerate as opposed to accelerating age. Those kinds of habits to strengthen your mind and your body. That's one takeaway I got from there. The other one was the mountain of science that already exists in this area. When I listened to all of the presenters, I was amazed at the depth and the granularity that they went to in analyzing the data and the conclusions that they drew from that data. Very illuminating for me, very illuminating. I'd like to say one other thing, Jim, when we were talking about the effects of mental illness. I have found, and this is something that I'm doing in the Sumter area, and that is I'm teaching chess to seniors. Chess has been proven to slow the onset of dementia and to reduce the onset of dementia at every age group, especially for seniors. But teaching it also for young people for the benefits that they get from problem solving, helps improve their analytical skills and all of the good things that does. But for seniors and for veterans, it slows the onset of dementia and keeps the brain more focused. I'm a chess enthusiast, so that's an easy one for me.
George, when I come back to you, can we talk about two things? One, Operation Reveille, and then what we're trying to do in Sumter, South Carolina. But we've got a visitor who just dropped into the house. I want to make sure that he's been searched and he's welcome here. Let me introduce my good friend and colleague, Sir Mr. Andrews. Please introduce yourself, please.
Good day. Thank you so much, Colonel Page. Raul Andrews, Executive Director of the APA Foundation. This is the affiliated charity, the education and research arm of the American Psychiatric Association. Our mission and vision is to promote the mental health and well-being of individuals and communities where we live, learn, work, worship, and play. And when we talk about our where we live pillar, two of the areas where we try to devote more than appropriate time is around veterans and military families and around disaster relief, particularly for those who've been left behind when disasters strike all across not only the United States, but across the world. In many instances, those who have already been underwater structurally or systemically face a heavier burden to deal with storms, wildfires, tornadoes, and so forth. And so live is very important to us. Colonel Page, when we think about our work for veterans, service members, military families, how do we help solve hard problems of hard people who did hard jobs in hard places?
That's true.
And they're hard to reach because their modality of adjust, adapt, overcome, doesn't put them in a position where they think asking for help is appropriate. They think that asking for help is a sign of weakness or it's inappropriate because it's selfish, not self-care. And so it has been our privilege in a three-legged stool, and then I'll give it back to you, Colonel Page. We try to approach our work from thought leadership, where we like to bring doctors to the problem, because when it's a physical health problem, like an orthopedic issue, nobody has a problem going to see a doctor about an orthopedic issue. But when it's a mental health issue, we're looking for any app we can find to try to give us calm. All right. And then, so we want thought leadership, treat mental health and substance use like a medical issue, and go to a medical attention if you need it. The second piece is our convening capacity. We have done wonders of work bringing people together who sometimes knew each other offline or through some listserv or virtual calls and so forth. How do we bring people together so that community looks like community? And community looks like community because we've been our own small home base for people to feel comfortable bringing their whole selves to solving hard problems. And then the last place where I think we've tried to do some good is to be a micro philanthropist. I mean, we're not the kind of organization that's going to be able to write 7 and 8 figure checks to help people do the things that they want to do. But sometimes seed money is what starts the orchard. And so we have been privileged, with the permission of our board, to provide seed money for opportunities like the inaugural Brain Health Summit at home base in Boston this past September, as we commemorated 9/11 tragedy and how we responded from that. But there have been many other instances that we're happy to discuss as the time permits.
Well, Dr. Lewis is on the line. She's got bad connection. Can you talk about helping her recently with her gala and her paying tribute to veterans, if you would, please?
Pleased to do so. So Dr. Lewis runs the Veterans Health and Wellness Foundation. It is a national organization, but it's based in the Washington metropolitan area, predominantly on the Maryland side of the Potomac. And because of our partnership with CCNA, and your invitation, Jim, to bring us in to all the great work that's happening for the Concerned Citizens Network of Alexandria City, we had an opportunity to meet Dr. Lewis. It's interesting because during the pandemic, I had been on a virtual panel like this with Dr. Lewis, and neither of us made the connection that we had worked together before on veterans issues, and we were sitting right next to each other at a CCNA power breakfast. And she talked about what she wanted to do to humanize our heroes and sheroes, and to recognize some folks, including you, Colonel Page, at an event she hosted last month. And so we went through, and I was pleased to have Amy Porphyry and principally Rudy Scott from our APA Foundation team kind of pour everything they had into the success of that event. Because of CCNA, not only did we have that contact, but we worked in Montgomery County, Maryland, with another organization, the John P. Mayhew Foundation. Colonel Mayhew had been in Army intelligence for many years, and as she tells it, she was at home shoveling snow because her husband had thrown out his hip. Their son had been home from deployment, and he was thought to be in his room. And they heard, unfortunately, a gunshot while she was out shoveling snow, and her husband was saying, "You got to come in the house right now." And unfortunately, as Dr. Mata talked about, the 17 plus we lose every day, John P. Mayhew was one of those folks we lost. But Captain Lewis, Dr. Lewis came to Mayhew because we got together at CCNA, and then we all showed up at the Veterans Wellness and Health and Wellness Foundation to provide tributes to some heroes and sheroes who had done great work and continue to serve. Service and servant leadership is what we see from a Major General Bowman, what we see from a Colonel Page, what we're seeing from Sophia Mata, MD, and her team. Service mixed with servant leadership. That's going to be our prescription for better mental and physical health outcomes.
Well, thank you. Let me also acknowledge that we have some other special guests. Emmett Roberts is on the line. He can't see us, but he says hello. Uh, Also, Kate Garvey joined us from across the bridge. Alan, you know who Kate is. So when we do these things, this is all about the community and connecting good people to good people. And here in Alexandria, the central focus of our health efforts is the CHIP, and it's led by my good friend Alan. Alan, 30 seconds on the CHIP real quick, please.
The CHIP is a community long-range plan, a 5-year plan that identifies the major health priorities identified by the community, and is based upon a community health assessment that's done prior to the development of the community health improvement plan. We're right now going through the community health assessment now because this community health improvement plan expires at the end of 2025. So it is our guiding document for the city. The Partnership for Health Alexandria is just the steward of it, but it is developed and implemented by numerous organizations and individuals throughout the city.
Yeah, Alan, you've been doing that. And we start, not Alan, not we, Alan's been the leader along with Natalie Towers. Even before the word COVID was even in our language here, it was before COVID came. They had started the CHIP, and now COVID changed it. It also introduced us to a thing called Zoom, where we can actually do more now because we can get together virtually. On the screen, we've got there's five of us, and Raul and I have the good fortune of being the only two who's connected to all of you. George, you haven't been to our breakfast. Sophia, you haven't been to our breakfast. Alan cooks the grits for our breakfast. So we're going to invite you to our next breakfast on the 4th of December. And Sophia, you're welcome to come if you like grits and
shrimp and grits, because I grew up in New Orleans. So
just straight up.
Just grits? Okay.
Just grits and cheese. And the church hosts that, and you'll be welcomed soundly by our good friend, Father Fest and Mrs. Anderson at the St. Joseph Catholic Church. So you're welcome. Let me move the program forward and talk to you a little bit more, Sophia, about why you and Raul decided to do the Brain Summit. You guys can talk to each other about that. We'll do something with the screen so it's you guys talking to each other. So Quan, do that screen thing so they're talking to each other.
You know, it grew out of a discussion with the Senior Director of Clinical Services, Joe Bonvie, and I, of wanting to gather people from across the nation to discuss how the body and the mind are connected, that people who are deployed, service members who are deployed, end up not only with just the mental invisible wounds of war, whether that's PTSD, depression, or TBI, brain injury, they also end up having changes to their physical self, including, weight gain, something that's called metabolic syndrome, pre-diabetes and diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and they're exposed to environmental toxins that increase their risk for cancer, cardiovascular disease, and wanting to figure out how do we change the trajectory that someone is on so that they live longer, but not only live longer, but have a better, healthy quality of life, and that they can actually have more time where they feel healthy. Because what good is it to live longer if you're just in or you don't feel good? So we were in the 9th inning, as we go back to the baseball metaphor, and there were problems with getting it funded, and it takes so long to get these conferences set up, and we had about a 6-month window, and this was, I guess, back in February, and I said, I don't think it's going to happen this year. And Raul said, it needs to happen. And not only does it need to happen, it needs to be something yearly where we can gather and talk about the progress that we've made. We talk about how things progress in the science that's really progressed that Major General Bowman mentioned. So how do we, progress? And we've got to keep the dialogue open. So I can say, though, that the recordings from the Brain Health Summit are available free of charge. And we have education on our website that anyone who is a nurse, a social worker, a therapist can access these all at no charge. And that's part of our work that we do to inform people of what you can do to get better, how you can increase your resiliency. So I'll turn it over to Raul. What are your thoughts and memories on all this?
So I would say I 1,000% concur, Dr. Mata, with everything you've said. And the only things that I would add really would be that everybody saw the cost of the event, but the value of the event was blurry. And I think too often, and I think we learned this at the conference itself, we don't have a manual for this in a community that has a manual for everything. And somehow they don't have a manual for this. And so my thought was, in hearing the business case for change that Home Base was trying to put together, again, as a convener and a micro philanthropist, how could the foundation help? And one of the things we've tried to do, and I think Dr. Mata has been instrumental in this for us, is raise the platform of the foundation high enough so that when people see that logo attached to an activity, they know it's real, they know it's serious, and they understand that positive social change could happen because we were a part of it. And so, when we got down to brass tacks, Dr. Mata and I and Joe Bonvy, Captain Bonvy, I think we're thinking about a way smaller event than ultimately they were able to pull together. But what magic arises when you put some seed money in and a recognizable couple of logos, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, people just started coming and bringing their institutions. Oh yeah, no, we have to be there. We'll be there. So some of what we saw all was a reflection on, we just refused to give up. We knew we were doing the right thing. We were willing to extend ourselves to make it happen. And I'm grateful that what happened far exceeded any expectations of what we had getting into the thing.
It was a great event. It was. Raul, Dr. Lewis is on the line. She's having trouble. She's on a boat. So if you could yell at her, say something to her, welcome her. She can hear us, but she's on choppy waters.
Dr. Lewis, well, she's a Navy person, so I know she know how to handle choppy waters. But put on one of these signature Veterans Health and Wellness events, plainly of 2024, but maybe of this decade. And for her to kick off her inaugural event that way, in such a strong way, kudos to you, Dr. Lewis, for all you did. And I know Rudy, Scott on our team, takes such personal pride in having had a hand in that. We still talking about your event weeks after it occurred.
And the food was great too, by the way.
The food was fantastic.
Dr. Lewis, talk to us real quickly about your event, how we got you on Steady Waters.
Sure. Thank you all very much for sort of filling in for me while I was having trouble transitioning and getting to a stable connection. The Veterans Health and Wellness Foundation, we've been around for about 10 years now, which is why we've had that celebratory event, or at least one of the reasons why we had that event, was to sort of heighten awareness, getting again into a little bit of what Raul mentioned earlier, and heighten awareness about the organization. We're very small, but as they say, mighty, in that we are a national organization. I've done this for the past 10 years with solely with volunteers. We don't have the type of income and donation levels that would allow for staff or what have you. But nonetheless, we've been able to provide types of services that we render, education, benefits navigation, and what we call resource connection. And we can talk about those separately later. But nonetheless, we're able to offer those, the things that we do to veterans and their families across the U.S. And because we're a small organization, obviously don't have dollars for marketing and what have you, the way in which we reach people is through word of mouth. And as most of you know, the vast majority of veterans, when they can come to you, an organization or what have you, and you're receptive and you're welcoming and you provide the help that they need, they talk about it. They talk about you and they talk about the organization. And so that's how we have been come to be known by veterans, is that when we help one or someone in their family, they obviously talk about that to others, and then we get calls from, Alaska, from Hawaii, from the West Coast, California, what have you. Even with all of these other organizations or larger organizations that are out there.
Dr. Lewis, let
And
me
so,
be real.
go ahead.
Tell us about your military background. I meant to have you introduce yourself. You've worn the uniform. Talk to me.
Sure. I served in the Navy as a family physician for about 25 years. And as all of you who are familiar with the military know, that we have a plethora of different positions in which we serve. And so I was grateful to the Navy for having me have a taste of many of those. As an administrator, as a department head, as a associate chair for research, led the clinic, headed up the residency for the different medical students when I was assigned at the Uniformed Services University, our military medical school in Bethesda. So I've had the opportunity to get experience in a number of different positions related to healthcare. And so over the course of those years, I have done a number of different things, research being one of them, a lot in the area of health and healthcare disparities, the influence and impact of culture on one's health, et cetera. And I believe, I think it was Raul speaking earlier when he was talking about health conditions and whether they were medical versus mental and behavioral health, and how if someone has an orthopedic condition, they are free or feel free to go to a physician, but if they've got something that's mental or behavioral health, they feel a bit inhibited in terms of going into an office setting, although some will try telehealth. I encourage it, however they are ready to receive it. Yes, direct healthcare, meaning face-to-face, can often be better for some of the things that we see in our veterans, as well as in their family situations. But if they can only do that telehealth piece at the moment, if that's the only thing that they can feel open to, I highly encourage them to participate, because if we can get them there, perhaps we can get them further down the line. And so with my experience in the military and then subsequently in industry, I worked for 7 years at a pharmaceutical company as a director for healthcare policy. So I got a different type of experience during that time frame. And so I brought all of that together. And it is what motivates me to continue to do what I do, which is to work to get veterans the health care that they need, whether that's through the DOD, the VA, or the civilian sector.
Well, one thing I want to remind of, one of success is making connections among us all, expanding the network. But at the end of the day, what we would like to leave with is some further recommendations as the things that we need to do together. We all agree that this is a community team sport. So if you've got some ideas, what's the one thing we could do, Alan, here? And when Dr. Mata comes to town, what do we want her to do? She's coming to town for shrimps and grits. So when she comes in, what do we want her to do? So as we come to a close in a few minutes, think about the one or two things you'd really like to share with this community. Alan and I are pretty active here in the community, and Raul is now an official member of Alexandria, so he's welcome anytime over here. Let me make another connection too. Dr. Lewis had the chance to go to South Carolina and spend some time with General Bowman, looking to the future. George, are you still there? Did we lose General Bowman? Talk to me about that. George, are you back?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Your time with Dr. Lewis when she came down to see you a few months ago.
When I met with Dr. Lewis, I saw her program. I listened to her passion. I listened to the width and the breadth of her program. And what we're trying to do and what she's trying to do is very similar. And we can complement and help one another.
So do you
Definitely.
see potential in Sumter for what she's doing and what the rest of the team players are doing?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, you asked earlier about Operation Reveille. Operation Reveille, just the Cliff Notes version, was an effort to take homeless veterans off the street and put them in housing. And the very first time we did it, we got 24 out of 25 veterans who were homeless one day, and we got them into housing in 24 hours. 24 out of 25. Pretty good numbers. And since that time, we've done it 4 additional times, all with success. It's a lot of moving parts. A lot of people took part in it, to include not only the landlords, but the power company, the gas company, the faith-based groups. They provided care packages for veterans consisting of soap, washcloths, toothbrushes, toothpaste, essentials so that they can take care of their own personal grooming. We had barbers who would give free shaves and free haircuts to veterans so that they could improve their self-esteem and improve their appearance. One of the takeaways that we got from that is that we need to go one step further than just providing them a place to stay. We needed to provide them job training so that 90 days from now, they won't be back on the street when the HUD vouchers run out and their rent subsidy is gone, and then they're back out again if they don't have any skills or haven't gotten any skills that can keep them out of that situation. So it's a work in progress. We're learning every time, but it's a worthwhile. We feel worthwhile about it because we're getting veterans off of the street and into homes.
We talked about a community approach in Birmingham and that area. We had to involve Miles College, University of Alabama. All of the community stakeholders have a stake in this. They may not know it, but when you can say to the power company that if you give us 6-month voucher, that'll help us find a job. That job may be working for the power company. So it's not just the medical side, it's the community approach. So that's where our sweet spot is. It's not, I don't even play a doctor on TV, but we do need to stay connected. So often when we're in meetings, we're looking left and right thinking, if Sophia were here with us at Ebenezer Church in Atlanta, what would she see? Well, what would she see if she was with us Saturday in Atlanta?
So I believe what Dr. Mata would have seen was our tribute to veterans, because one of the things when I'm talking to Major Emmett Roberts, he always talks about you've been leading and now you're retreating, right? Veterans have to support veterans, and we have, as allies, we have to be supportive of veterans supporting veterans. And I think in the military families. And so I think Sophia would have seen that in Atlanta with us, because we did recognize all of the veterans who were in the audience with an appropriate, it wasn't quite an Evelyn Lewis tribute, but an appropriate tribute for service, but also to see that what work that was being done after the uniform came off, pillars of the community still putting in work, but using the modalities that you learned in uniform to help shape and reframe and redefine what community really looks like.
To all of us, one of the award recipients Saturday with Raw was a young man who's retired military guy, first sergeant. Very sharp guy. You could tell he had his stuff together. We're walking out of the church and he stopped Raw and me and he said, "Look, I love this program, but I saw on your resume that you guys are working on mental health for veterans." And in a tender moment, when 3 black men talking, he says, "I need help. No pride. I'm not okay. I need help." And I looked at Raul and we both went, check. The journey continues. I mean, there are people out there who say, I think I got it, but they don't. So every time we have one of these sessions, we're looking to the left and to the right as who's that one guy or guyette in the room who really needs help. So the success of these forums to me is that I can say now, here's Dr. Mata's number, here's Dr. Lewis's number, and we can extend that network outward. When we do that well, Alan, is that true, Alan? Alan, do we do that well?
Yes, we can do that well. And actually, I'm really excited, particularly about Dr. Mata. Up until June, I never heard of home base. I started hearing about home base back in June. I was up in Boston over Veterans Day weekend. I was seeing signs of home base all over the place. I've heard about it from other people, and I really would like for people in the city of Alexandria and Northern Virginia to be educated about home base. I think it's a gem that's unknown in this area, that maybe there might be one or two people who know about it, but I think most people don't know about it. So I really like to spread the word about home base down in this area.
Great. Well,
it's all word of mouth, and I think that every single one of us, like I hadn't heard about the Veterans Health and Wellness Foundation and the work that the general is doing, and we all have particular strengths and areas because this is such a big mission that it requires many people across the entire nation. This is not a job that only one person can do. We need a whole entire team.
Yes.
And I refer to General Bowman, Colonel Page, Mr. Andrews as the A team. We really do need an A team that can bring together people and inform, inspire, and empower, just like CCNA does. I'm learning so much from you, Alan, and from you, Dr. Lewis, and what you do. And we each have strengths, and I might be calling on each of you to help with different aspects of care. And when duty calls, people need to know that we're going to be there.
Right.
Yeah, if I could say a couple of things, Colonel Page, in regard to what we were just talking about. When you mentioned that gentleman who said to you, "I need help," one of the tools that's on our website is called Check-in. It's free. All the tools that we have on our site are free to veterans, their family members, etc. But Check-in in particular, you go there, it requires a form that might take you a minute to fill out. It's primarily your name and an email, phone number, etc. You as the individual can fill it out, or someone can fill it out on your behalf. That gets sent in. It works like a concierge service. It gets sent in. It goes to that pool. People review that. Someone gives you a call within 24 to 48 hours to gather additional information. And then within 7 days, you've got a mental health appointment.
You got it.
Because they have a network of providers.
Where are the appointments? At the VA, or where do they go?
It may be any number of different places. What's the Cohen clinics are one of the bigger places because they're located in a lot of different areas. But the organization in which I'm working with is the Bush Institute. And so it's on our website. As I mentioned, you go there, you fill out that very minimal form, you get a call, they gather more information, and literally within 7 to 10 days, you can have a mental health appointment. In a place where you're located. Obviously, they tie all of those things in together. So again, as the doctor was saying, it's about knowing who's doing what, who has what resources, the networks we all have, et cetera, and bringing all of that together. I can, from just the little bit I've heard while on this call, as well as some of what I knew before, within the 6 of us on this call, we've got the network and resources that could help thousands of people right now. Now, that's without adding anything else or knowing anyone else.
Dr. Lewis, are you connected to Dr. Mata's website?
I am not. I'm not.
Shame on you, Dr. Mata. Shame on you. I'd like to have you guys connected on your social media platform.
Absolutely.
Let me jump to Raw real quick. You mentioned home base and the Red Sox. Sir, you want to comment on what you're trying to do with the football team?
So on December 1st, or as you would say, December, right at Northwest Stadium, in the Washington metro area. The Washington Commanders will be hosting the Tennessee Titans, and we are hosting their first inaugural mental health game. As part of the staging of that, there will be discounted tickets for those who choose to participate. There is a pregame panel where we'll be talking about mental health and wellness with clinicians and persons with lived experience. And then there's a special tent for enjoying the game after all that's done. But it's early access to the stadium. And then obviously no field access. But this is a way that we're using people with unique challenges. And just like when we deal with the military and veterans, Colonel Page, if you're dealing with people who are high performing, high expectation, if they're willing to say, I need help, it makes it that much easier for those of us who aren't the hardest of the hard. Because if the hardest of the hard can get help, whether that's on the gridiron, on rough waters, or on the battlefield, then how is it that I can say I can't get help if I need it?
We're talking community. A couple things. One, since Raul is not an official Alexandrian, we welcome him. Can you comment on your Baltimore conference and how that went with ACPS and some of the things you're trying to do in the coming year?
So every year since 1958, there has been what we call a fall conference. This is the Community Mental Health Conference, and it's a 2.5-day conference, usually in either late September or early October. And so what we were able to do is bring out usually 600 to 800 attendees, including some resident trainees, because what a lot of people don't know who should know on this call, roughly 3 out of every 5 psychiatrists has touched the VA in some way as a part of their training. And so they may not stay with the VA as they move throughout their careers, but almost as much as any other specialty in the House of Medicine, psychiatry and medicine have been together almost from the beginning. And so we bring out our clinicians. It's multidisciplinary conference. So you'll not only have psychiatrists at the fall conference, psychologists, social workers, nurses, therapists, coaches, and so forth. And what was really special this year, we tried to deal with the Youth Mental Health Conference right about the time that the Surgeon General was saying we got to do more for parents as well. And thanks to CCNA and you, Colonel Page, we were able to have the superintendent of public schools be the featured speaker for us. We have never, in the history of that conference, had a superintendent be a headline speaker for any of our plenary sessions.
Yeah, she was fantastic and really did well. So kudos to you. And also one other thing, I'll let you go. You just recently had a Latino mental health session that's on that population. Very quickly, your thoughts and what you want to share.
Oh, in the role of convener, when people have asked us to just lend our space and our name to bring people closer to the solution, we have tried to do that. And so we had some individuals from the Hispanic Latino community who attended a prior event that we did for the African American Black community during Black History Month. And the question was, and I'm just going to be frank here, Colonel Page, is this just for Black people or do you do this for everybody? And we were quick to say, yes, if a community is open and willing, we're more than happy to do it. And so as part of Hispanic Heritage Month, we brought in national, regional, and local leaders, including doctors from the HNMA, which is the Hispanic National Medical Association, as well as the Hispanic Health Foundation, to co-lead an event with our president-elect for the APA. And we talked about, again, some of the hard problems when you're talking about hard to reach and underrepresented audiences. But the one message I want to leave for this audience, Colonel Page, just like I did in that event, we have the largest at APA Foundation pipeline program for psych trainees and medical students in the world, not just the United States. And I think too often when we're working with these communities and medical students or people who are training to be psychiatrists and they're not aware of our programs or they believe that our programs aren't for them, I would say go to apaf.org/fellowships, apaf.org/fellowships, and just get to know a little bit more. The good news is there's no application fee and there's no enrollment fee if you get accepted into this program.
One thing, I know you're looking at that pipeline, but all of us need to join hands in looking for the next generation of health providers. Where do we find them? And how do we get them into the pipeline? Not doctors, it could be lab technicians, but there's a call out there for us to develop the next generation.
So we just signed an MOU with the Health Occupation Students of America, HOSA. They've been around since 1976. They have chapters in all 50 states and about 50 countries around the world. They had their world conference in Houston, right outside the Texas Medical Center, back in June of this year. 12,000 students across the world came to Houston for this conference. The display area fit half of the convention floor. All of the branches of the military were there, among other partners or sector players in healthcare. And they're very clear at HOSA that there are many careers you can have in healthcare other than being a doctor or a nurse. And so they're promoting just getting in where it makes sense to you, but be exposed, because a lot of what leaves us behind is the lack of exposure. We don't know what the opportunities are, so our opportunities are automatically limited.
Wow, that's a lot. And
that's George Safakis that got us in that, Colonel Page.
Who's it? Who's George?
Yeah, he's the one that made that introduction.
Wow, connections count. Because we got a few minutes left. What I'd like to do is get some summary thoughts and impressions from each of you, so that I'll have a nice film clip to share. Make sure that Jackie and Quan don't beat me up for not asking these questions. A couple things before we go, though. We are going to tape this and send you the full tape. It'll be out for the world to see. Please share it with your colleagues in your network. And if you think about growing up in the South where we have family reunions, there's always somebody there that you didn't know you were related to. So every time we have one of these sessions, there's somebody on here. Raul said something that I didn't know. I did not know about the HOSA conference. And we talk all the time. So we learn and we share. And that's the good thing. So if you could think about two things from me. One, your summary thoughts, and then the one thing you'd like to see next time around when we have these sessions. Then Dr. Mario, we'll send you a recipe for shrimp and grits that you can sneak. Why don't we start with you, Alan?
Well, the summary comments are, first off, I took a lot of notes today of things I didn't know, and I'm really excited to follow up. One of the other things I do is I chair the Suicide Prevention Alliance of Northern Virginia, so I know we don't have a connection to home base, and those recordings about the Brain Health Summit, and that's going to change real soon, within the next week, I can tell you that. And then just sharing the information is really important, particularly around veterans, and the important thing is that giving people the opportunity to and the exposure to somebody that they feel comfortable enough to say, I need help. And I think that's the most important thing, whether it's a veteran or anybody else who's struggling with their mental wellness, is that asking out for I need help. One of the other things I want to mention is I do think it's important for us to talk about career and technical education. The HOSA conference that Raul had mentioned is all part of the career and technical education program. In Alexander, we have a career and technical education program that also deals with surgical instruments and EMT training, a surgical sterilization program, EMT training, as well as nursing training, etc. And I think we marrying up about how do we connect those two, those CTE programs with mental health development of a workforce would be very important and helpful.
Alan, one other thing I just share for the audience, Alan and I are on the Alexander Community Safety Committee, and we meet to look at issues around safety. Tomorrow we meet, and Alan, I'd like to kind of weave some of this into our conversation tomorrow.
Yes, definitely. I think it's important because we're focused on communications. But I know I was at a meeting a while back on a Friday night that dealt with police and mental health. and the intersections of those. And there were a lot of people who didn't understand the intersections that were going on. And there were a number of people, for instance, who did not know that over 60% of our police officers in the city of Alexandria had been trained in crisis intervention. And they were surprised because they didn't think that that was anywhere where our police officers are right at this moment. So between that and our Alexandria A Corp, which is teaming up mental health specialists with police officers and even mental health specialist teams going out as opposed to police officers in situations. And there's just not enough. So that's a communications issue I'll like for us to discuss.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, Al. George, John Bowman, sir, your thoughts.
One of the things I'd like to leave everybody with is to let you know that the city of Sumter is building a brand new veterans nursing home. It's going to be a state-of-the-art facility similar to the ones that you have in Alabama and in other parts of South Carolina as well. They are also building a veterans village. This veterans nursing home is just a start. A veterans village is also planned to deal with homeless veterans. Another organization has received a grant and they are breaking ground on a homeless shelter for veterans. Right now it's for male veterans, but we're working to expand that and to accommodate female veterans as well. But those are the two big things that are underway here in Sumter. I plan to be knee deep in both of them.
Are you? Is Raw still welcome to come to Sumter?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm looking forward to an occasion where I can get you and Raw and Dr. Mata as well to come to Sumter to make presentations, to receive presentations as well.
I'm okay with Dr. Mata. I don't know about Raw. I'm good. Dr. Lewis, your comments, ma'am.
Yes, not to make light of a serious discussion today in regard to mental health, but my big brother, James Harris, who spent 28 years in the Marine Corps, when we see each other, he will often say, "How you doing?" And my response will be, "I'm fine." And he says, "I know that, but how you doing?" In other words, a lot of times when folks are saying to us, "I need help," by that time, they are knee deep in that need. And so working to find out how we get them sooner before they actually have to even verbalize that, because by the time they get to that, it's quite serious. And so working together with organizations like the ones that you all are part of and directly with you together, I think there's a lot we can do about that in terms of reducing the amount of time it takes for someone to get the help that they need. And also understanding the impact on that individual, but on their families. One of the things that we do at the foundation is we emphasize that anytime you hear us talking about the needs of veterans, et cetera, make sure that you're also thinking about the family itself. Because oftentimes, whatever is going on with that veteran can actually be impacting the family to an even greater degree. And so I look forward to working with all of you, exploring more about what it is you do and how we can better connect and align so that our reach can be to far more people than we have right now. Whether that's at a football game or another conference, regardless to what it looks like, I think us joining forces, if you will, can be very helpful to all of those that we're trying.
I'm glad you could join us, Dr. Lewis. For all of the veterans, for George, Dr. Lewis, the term combat multiplier, that's what we are. Think about it. Dr. Mata.
Thanks, Ray. So summary and takeaways. So we had the Brain Health Summit on 9/11, and we had a bunch of tasks and things that we wanted to accomplish. And we're just starting. And if you look at what we've accomplished since then, we opened up our polytrauma suite that has new and innovative treatments, including transcranial magnetic stimulation, specialized vestibular therapy treatment for people who have dizziness and problems with balance. And we also have a veteran and family lounge where people can just gather and they have coffee if you want coffee. And this has been something that's been really a labor of love, and that's been brought together by an entire community to help support special operations forces. And then also what we've talked about is the social determinants of health, the social factors that can actually influence people's lives and the trajectories they're on. And I talked about this and how I got into this and how I ended up in it was at the VA in West Los Angeles. And if you think of that, it's a huge VA in West Los Angeles, and 1/3 of the nation's veterans that are unhoused live in Los Angeles. And if you look at the race and ethnicity, there's an overrepresentation of African American and Hispanic people within that population. But Los Angeles being the city of innovation, they have brought mobile phones and mobile phone access to the veterans who are on the streets. They got them off of the streets and got them housing within a park that was not being used. The irony of it is it's right next to Westwood in Beverly Hills, and within the population, you have a hurting nation. And we really do need to do whatever we can to help heal this nation. And Los Angeles is very important to me for the next and upcoming year, looking at the American Psychiatric Association annual meeting, where I will be there with you, Colonel Page, and Raul Andrews, and I hope the rest of the people, Major General Bowman, Alan, Dr. Lewis, if you can join us to continue this conversation and give us a report card on where we've come from today until then.
Thank you, Dr. Mata. Before I turn it,
Date.
Yes, sir. George, I'm sorry.
What's the date of the conference in Los Angeles?
Thank you. It's May 17th to the 21st.
Okay.
Will you be back from your world tour by that time, George? A couple of announcements before I turn the session call. I'd like to mention a couple of people that's important to our effort. One is Dr. Gashan Mance. She's the Associate Dean of Psychology at Howard University. She's a community partner. She works with our first responders. She's just a powerful, powerful woman, a leader, a mom, and our heart goes out to her every time I mention her name. Alan knows her, Raul knows her. So when we have these sessions, I always take time to make sure we mention Dr. Mance. She'll be back with us pretty soon. I also have another colleague who's not on this session, but I will bring him in the next time. He has a foundation, it's called the Immune Recovery Foundation, where he's looking at those issues that affect the community. I'm on their board, and I'd like for him to share with them next time around what he's doing in the community. I also have a note here, too, that a couple of my friends have joined us. I want to make sure that I acknowledge Major Roberts, Sheriff Casey, my kids, my fraternity brothers, the greatest fraternity on earth. Our good friend Nick Sensley is here. Nick, how you doing? We'll see you tomorrow morning for breakfast. So what happens often when you have these sessions, they'll call you and say, hey, Jeff, you ain't say nothing about me. But I'm not going to have that problem because I'm acknowledging all of you guys. And if I didn't mention you, it's Alan Lomisk's fault. Let's keep that straight. Also, I'd like to give a personal holiday thanks to my team, Jackie, Kwan, Dr. Hirsch, Chris, Cynthia, all the team here in Alexandria. We are a nonprofit, all volunteer force, and we're kind of everywhere. I want to acknowledge the Lions Club, Mary Lee Anderson, Kate Garvey, and all those ladies and gentlemen who walk with us every day to make sure that that kid down on Backlick Road gets a fair shot. And that's kind of what our cry and call is. I will end my remarks revisiting the last 2 days for me, being a veteran and being asked to speak with other veterans in nursing homes. It's not an obligation, it's the honor. And anytime I'm asked to do that, I'm going to do it. Yesterday was particularly touching in that one young man came into the session well dressed, looked like Alan Lomax, dressed like Raw. And I thought he was the director of the facility. He said, "No, sir, my name is Jack, and I'm a patient here. I've been here for 5 years, and I've had 6 heart attacks. 6. And he says, I heard you were coming. I wanted to hear veterans speak because I'm not sure if I'll see you again." So when you get those tender moments, when you have these sessions, you say, well, wow, I'm really privileged to be in a position to connect myself, my organization, and my family to guys like you. So Alan, as always, I thank you for being who you are. Doc, take care of yourself on the boat. Sophia, come home soon with the grits. And I'm going to turn it over for final words and thoughts from my fraternity brother to be someday. Raw, closing comments, sir.
As much as I love you, Colonel Page, that'll never happen in terms of but we're not going to get into that. We're going to say that both our organizations were founded in the same year, 1911. Mine was founded first, Kappa Alpha Psi. This has been a true labor of love, but I think every time we come together, we learn something new, even from one another, even though we're in touch a lot. And I think what we have to do is figure out how 3, maybe 4 times a year, we have our own briefing that could include the kind of scorecard or report card that Dr. Mata is talking about, just so we make sure we do the information sharing, because ultimately no one person or individual can solve a grand challenge by themselves. At the same time, though, as I mentioned when I was with you, Colonel Page, in Atlanta, in front of that whole church at Ebenezer, we can't do everything. But together, we can do anything. And I think we're doing anything. And we just need to keep together, be better coordinated, because the reality of it is, by having veteran leadership in doing this work, is giving us as allies permission to help, and to help in a culturally appropriate way, so that if we don't offend people we're trying to help, which turns them off from the help they or their loved ones need. So I wish you all Godspeed and good blessings. I can tell you the next frontier in our national mental health care works, literacy, and awareness campaign is veterans and military families. And I wasn't even ready to have that conversation until I started working with all of you to make sure when we do it right. So thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to contribute. Let's get some more good done.
Okay, thank you. One last comment. Driving home today, I got a phone call from a friend. I was meaning to call him. He's a pastor here in the area. His name is Dr. Savage. He runs an organization called Voice. And I wanted to talk to him, but I was busy. Turned to the corner and my phone rang, and it was Dr. Savage. And he says, "Colonel, you've been on my mind." So Raw, what he asked me to do was get you 2 guys in the same room, stand by for the connection. It'll be coming soon. So to all of you guests and folk out there, thank you for joining us this afternoon. We're going to sign off now, and hope to see you soon. If your guests could stay on too for a minute, just for a brief moment. Quan?